Well, hello there, everyone. I talk about Help Update Explained, and basically, this client activity right here talks about, if most of them, like you talk about, if it's what you call working a job, or if it's students, and I can go ahead and use right here an example right here of like, maybe if it's students or kids and maybe a daycare center, that type of stuff. But talking about is like for to help update explained and. For the most part, that if we were to think about like to explain to anyone about what exactly does help and update usually mean, and knowing about that if we were that I went ahead and drew right here, if this was right here was me, and then lying right here, I'll be maybe sitting right here at a desk or something like that, and then be working on some stuff, and then I say that I'm like, yeah, that more like what could I be doing while sitting here? It's like talk about like doing my study work or anything like that, and then the type of shoes I would be wearing, and then the way the seat is adjusting. And I know whenever I was drawing this, I was like thinking about like if this was supposed to be like say an automatic adjusted rest armrest seat seat right here, but you have right here is like talking about my drawing this right here, making sure that talk about like like whenever I drew this, it was like go ahead and start with the seat first, and then go ahead and draw the armrest about right there. But anyway, but you have right here is example right here of me, and mainly I had like says that the pink marker to use just to draw is like for my arms it is, but let's just say though that if this was right here was me, and knowing about that some things that while we're in the classroom, there's some things that help us understand about what we're supposed to be doing, and while we're in the classroom, and I can remember that it was not it was not in the 7th grade, but sometimes it was in I think if I can remember the way I went and drew this, it would have been like maybe in the 2nd or 3rd grade. That knowing about I'm like, yeah, that for most of the time while students are in class, and if they don't understand something such and such, and then as well as hey, that you're supposed to be doing your work, etc., stuff like that, and knowing about that, you say what does help basically mean, and so for the most part that basically means it's like for like some extra assistance, and some we say that basically it means like what's causing for assistance. It's like for assistance, and then I looked up of course in a dictionary, knowing about I'm like for rescue. I'm like for knowing about I'm like it basically means like for rescue, and then like for extra assistance, basically what it means for help and update. And I chose this day, by the way, for update is knowing about that they have right here is for update, that knowing about that for most learners, if they need help with something, and knowing about I'm like, yeah, that if we maybe want to take one responsibility of knowing about I'm like, yeah, that whatever that you work with, if it was maybe a tutor or any other specialist, is knowing about whatever you work with them, and they more likely leave the responsibility on you to turn in the assignment, or to turn something in, or to mail something, that type of stuff. And knowing about that, like for help updated explained is whatever I drew right here is some pictures right here. You have right here is a bookshelf right here, and I'll go ahead and write right here is like with the green, but you have these examples of these books, and I'm like, yeah, I work right here with the green right here to show the books, and then right here will be like a globe, and I'm telling you by here, I'm like, yeah, whenever I was drawing this, I was like, go ahead and draw a globe, and then go ahead and try to draw a bookshelf, and then maybe some examples of some students, right here. And I may mention it before that whenever I was young, that a lot of times that I kind of kept to myself a lot of times, and the teachers wanted you to interact with all the other kids while they were in the classroom, that talk to them and kind of get to know the other kids, and then they may sound like talking about them like if like you walk into a classroom and they said that, hello class, it's like today we're going to be talking about North America. You're doing an assignment about North America. Read chapters 1 through 3 and then write a paper about it. About in your own words about it's like for what different continents, what continent is located in southern Europe, or if it's Melanesia or some kind of like that. But what I went ahead and drew, explain right here is basically you have right here is a student, and most of the time with some students that if you're going to be what you call have any type of disability or anything like that, any type of for doctors diagnosis or anything like that, birth defect, knowing about any type of disorder, or maybe if it's somebody who's from another country, or anything else about any I guess history so far as education, learning history, and for the most part that you have right here, I went ahead and drew right here as an example right here of a tutor, and somebody who's there to guide the student for whatever they have a question with, and went ahead and drew this right here as if they were sitting down with them and then helping them with whatever assignment that they were working on. And what I went ahead and drew right here is that right here is like a I was thinking about using a paper, but then anybody I think I'm like, yeah, go ahead and maybe draw it like if it was like a desk, if it looked like a desk right here. And I probably had that thought about maybe a million of think about. I'm like, yeah, lots of hundreds of other maybe examples I could have maybe used for an example for something that an assignment that more likely a student would more likely be confused with, such as if it's besides maybe the times tables, or if it's the basic shapes, say at the graph or something like that, or geometry or any type of subjects like that, of knowing about that how we feel about whenever we're working on something, and then you're stuck on something, and then it seems like half the time, even if you raise your hand, it seems like that really did. I'm like, if anybody were asked, I'm like, maybe that's maybe one of the reasons why I had an imaginary friend for all those years, and I can tell anybody here that I'm like, yeah, that and which probably is a true story. Knowing about, I'm like, I guess you say I was kind of embarrassed, really to talk about it, for the teachers, up there at the school that I basically had somebody by imaginary, that if I had any problems in school, if it was gym, or during recess hours or anything like that, or maybe if it was anything that related to maybe anything inside the classroom, that they would be like, say, speech teachers and stuff, but let's just say that this right here, per se, is like a tutor, though, that a lot of times that knowing about that, that they would be like, say, whenever I was in school, that I would see a special needs assistant teacher, and as well as another teacher at the school, but this right here, what I had drew right here, is an example right here of a student that is trying to work on an assignment, and one of these assignments could be like to where that you match up with the shapes that you have right here. Is like you have these two say these squares right here, and I'll go ahead and work right here. Go ahead and let's just say, yeah, I'm like that they say that for one assignment that you're working with squares, and then the next one working with the triangles. It's like which one that looks like it's and it's like with most assignments nowadays, I'm like, I don't even know if they have it to where they show it maybe like in 3D or something like that. But let's just say that this if you were to turn, if you were to change the direction of the shape, then what do you call that right there? And try to move the shape to where it matches up. You say with the counter box or something like that. Like that, there would be you'll be working with on an assignment to where that they would be talking about squares. And I'll go and write this right here for squares. Like for square 1, square 2, and square 3, that type of stuff. And knowing if there was like say multiple choice, and I'm sure some students that may say, like, if it's a job or anything like that, you know, if like, you know, I say that a lot of times multiple choice may be easier for some students. You know, some students that may say, no, it's not easier. Actually, you know, multiple choices, you know, is, you know, like that, you know, a lot of the answers that you don't really agree that they are the best, you know, answers for it. But on the other hand, and knowing about, I'm like, yeah, they get through the test just a little bit faster. You know, they may, you know, some tests that they may say that, I'm like, yeah, multiple choice, that they usually use the multiple choice other than, which causes the type of a test to where, that the assignments to where, that you got to come up with your own answers and write, like I say, like maybe a paragraph or two written assignment, you know, stuff like that. But that right there is, like I say, example right there of an assignment that more likely a tutor will be, you know, assisting, you know, the student with. And a lot of times, though, you know, help may be, you know, have a number of reasons, you know, a number of meanings, of course, is knowing about, like, you know, rescue or anything like that. Yeah, if anybody has thought about, like, yeah, that for help is like, if it's anything like, you know, counseling or anything like that, or if it's, you know, maybe depression or anything like that, but it could be a number of meetings. But you know, the way I went through this right here is basically talking about, say, for education. What most, I'm sure most parents would more likely say, though, is like. But on the other hand, a note about with most tests, though, that I talk about my between it, you know, the student, and then I'll always say the teacher, and then a tutor, you know, anybody else who's willing to give, you know, the assistance to, is that knowing about that with most of the time, though, is like if we're talking about, you know, the student right here, is that with the student that they probably think, I'm like, yeah, that, you know, you get all, you know, frustrated because you're trying to understand something, or you don't, you know, quite, you know, like, you know, and basically, though, that one, you know, I don't know what you call that type of word, to where that let's just say that if anybody were to say, like, yeah, if know what I'm talking about, come that moment to where if there's a student right here, and then they feel like that you know, that they're working on a problem, and then all of a sudden, you know, all these other students that they have, like, what you call this, you know, spare time, or how you know, that there's like about maybe a few other students in there too that didn't get stuck at all. Like that they're actually they say that, you know, after you get done with this assignment, then go ahead and pull a book off the bookshelf and read it, and then you know, and you know, pick whatever story that you want. And there may be some students like talking about, like, yeah, they may say that, oh no, I don't read. Yeah, I don't read. You know, I don't write. But I'm like, oh, you know, in this classroom that we got rules. We got rules, so, you know, you gotta pick a book from the bookshelf and read it. But anyway, I like talking about, I'm like, yeah, that really, that you know, that they'll read it maybe if it has anything to do with you know, maybe, you know, 3D glasses, or if it's anything to do with, you know, the 3D globe or anything. But I'm like, well, until we get some of that stuff in our classroom and knowing about it, like, you'll learn what I teach you, what we teach you. But other than that, knowing about, I'm like, for most of the time that we may, you know, also think about, I'm like, you know, really about what's more, you know, what's more important other than, you know, than a child's education. It's like for a student's education. But for, you know, some students that, you know, a lot of times that whenever they're in the classroom, there are some students that seem like that, yeah, that there are quite a few students in the classroom to where they don't have no problems at all, and some one or two students that have a lot of problems. And knowing about that really, that you know, that some that may say that, well, that's their problem, you know, well, you know, and I guess you're going to have to go to a specialist or something like that. But I don't know, I at the time, like, wondering that why is it that it's so hard, you know, for other people, you know, to respect other students, and knowing about, you know, for who they are. And I'm sure they say that, you know, maybe not every time, but sometimes, that knowing about, I'm like, you know, really, that because on your hand, that knowing about, I keep thinking about, I'm like, really, that what have other students maybe learned about me, huh? I'm like, whenever I first started attending classes, at some, you know, points that known about with some students that they say that whenever they first start from their first day of school, that things went rough because either people picked on them, or they they didn't do the assignment right or something like that. They're having a hard time understanding something, etc., etc. And as well as I'm like, yeah, that this is supposed to be like girl with makeup on, that type of. But let's just say though that these were kids right here, and knowing that kids sitting down with books, and draw right here is like a book with a blue hardback to it. These were like books that they had in their hand that they would sit down and want to read them, and be reading them, and something to do after they get done with the test or something like that. But in a lot of ways, and I sometimes I felt like that way a lot of times too, to where that while I'm in the classroom, that other students that would more likely be working ahead of me and knowing about, I'm like, yeah, that you kind of get frustrated. And some kids that may say that especially learning something, that you get frustrated because of some other students that are working ahead of you, and then along with that, the teacher is like wondering, concerned about what's taking you so long getting the work done. But other than that, I enjoy here's like these mats, like these matties, and I guess you can call them like the matties, for MATE or something like that for Matty. But you have these mats right here to where like these little carpeting placements on the ground, say on the floor, that each one of them that more likely could present for like you say it's like a the help station, knowing about that you have these options about 3 different options. It's like if you be sitting at the desk, and then the green basically means that you need some assistance about maybe spelling and grammar, and maybe as long as like for point solving or something like that. And then the blue that more likely mean for marking up exams or something like that. Some assistance, some help with marking up exams. And then the red could be it's like for like a redos, or if it's anything to do with maybe if it's hey, I might that you got a number of questions wrong on a test, and then you got to see that that tutor, that counselor, to help assist you. It's like you got these 3 options, and knowing about that that for the most part is like basically what does help basically mean. And we may think though that like it's what more likely what it's supposed to do is that it's like these programs, I guess offered if they are paid for by the school and from the state, or and I talk about these other extra programs to knowing about in order to be able to help the student exceed better. And the way I would think about though that we may think the way I would think about though is that a lot of times it seems that way, to where that there some schools that maybe say that I'm like, yeah, that they're having more confident maybe with the students, as well as helping them out for whatever they don't understand, that they would provide the help they need to help them understand the assignment a little bit better, as well as getting the work done, and knowing about they may on their first few days of school that they may say that they're hopeless, they oh, they're never gonna, they ain't gonna pass, something like that. They'll just, they'll be lucky, that they'll be lucky if they even pass the test from the first quarter, stuff like that. But really, about, for knowing about, if anybody has ever thought about, I'm like, yeah, that whenever you were in school, that if we ever heard of this, right here, talk about, see, for after school, for after school activities. Such as I can maybe also use band, if most of us have ever been in band before, is if this was like say considered like say an after school activity for after school, is basically that towards the end of the day it would be between the hours of like 5:30 between 5:30 p.m. between 5:30 p.m. and 8 o'clock p.m. something like that. Some students that may say that between these times right here, that maybe that they would be rather be at home watching TV or doing something other than the the whole part about like being working on schoolwork, etc., etc. But let's just say though that with the hours, say the after school activities, and knowing about that some students that is like talking about that they need some more help with their education, and knowing about that they need help understanding something, and knowing that how hard are the students, are they willing to work just to succeed in this subject, and knowing about that there may be some that may say that get rid of this boy, get rid of this kid, he's not studying for the finals, he keeps talking about stars and this stuff, he's not interacting with all the other students, it's like he's distracting the students, etc., etc. But let's just say though that a lot of times that if we come to a point to where that that with understanding about trying to get the student and helping them and understanding about what they need them to do just to succeed in the classroom. Some that may say that only to be able to do that is knowing about you just really have to get along with everybody in the classroom, but on the hand and too, that knowing about that a lot of times whenever I'm in the classroom, whenever I'm in the classroom, it's like you see these other students here, and knowing about you have right here is a student right here, and it's like tough as like like if there's a student called by the name of Abigail, Abigail, or a student by the name of Abigail, and I'm like, hey, look at Abigail's work. I'm like, she went ahead and added a few paragraphs on her page, but according to the assignment requirement, you're required to do this, you're required to do that, with Abigail, and then along with Aaron, and then along with Salvador, or other students in the classroom that more likely would say that for what they have on their work, that more likely that needs to match about the same for what you got to do. But on the hand, that knowing about that also tell anybody here that knowing about they used a lot of times used to always think that whenever you look at other students, it's like talking about between looking at at their hair, and looking at maybe if they have anything nice and to wear, but a lot of times I'm like, looking at maybe looking at their toes, and maybe their shoes, and knowing about about really about how far that we are, and knowing about that how far that we are, and then before we got to know each other a little bit more. I'm like talking about that it reminds me of a story, and when I was young, that I used to, I'm like, somebody in the classroom that asked me if I can help them, if I can tie their shoe for them, and I'm like, I think that was in the 2nd grade. If I can remember right, in the 2nd grade, if I can remember right, that I learned how to tie my shoe in the 2nd grade, and usually they usually say though that I'm like, that you first tie it. Like you loop it, you swoop it, and then you pull. It's like around a tree, stuff like that, that type of stuff. But you learn how to tie a double knot. But somebody in the classroom had asked me, if I can tie their shoe for them, and the teacher was like, "Oh no, you tie your own shoe." I'm like, can you turn the paper? Like these students would ask another student, it's like, hey, like, can you write the date down for me, or can you sharpen the pencil for me, or something like that. But anyway, sometimes I would not mind doing it for him, but sometimes the teacher would have a problem with it too. But other than that you have right here is like the type of help update that more likely that maybe we can get, as well as what you calls like if it's a bookshelf or anything like that we're reading to students. But let's just say though, it's like say with most of the time with kids, is like whenever they wear their glasses, oh yeah, they can see the board just fine. And like top I say for today's assignment, I'm like, that a lot of times if we're going to be working at something, a paper or something like that we I say for like between multiple choice and like for today's assignment, See, for today's assignment, go ahead and write down, like, yeah, Tom, like, you also think about, like, well, did I spell that right? But anyway, but so far as you talk about, say, for today's assignment, if it's, like, say, for multiple choice, and, between A, B, and C, for which one that best describes, the answer, something like that, and then, as well as, what you call, anything, like these blanks right here, I went and drew this right here. If you had to, write down your own answers, such as, it's like you talk about reporting, if it's math or if it's, shapes or anything like that. And one thing I want to talk about also, knowing about whenever I'm sure anybody say that whenever you're a kid, that maybe that, you would, I say that, what you would like to do for, like, the shapes. If you have, like, say, maybe the triangle and then the square and the octagon, the diamond or something like that, those type of shapes. Is knowing about, I'm like, yeah, that you maybe like to solve a puzzle, and you might think about, I'm like, yeah, that we probably think, oh, well, there's like what you call is like a problem to where knowing about, if the kids don't understand about, what you gotta do on the assignment, and more likely though that knowing about maybe really when is it ever going to get done, because knowing about that really about the kids, the kids maybe don't understand it, and then until they do, then maybe that knowing about if it's going to really change their attitude, and knowing about that for how well that they perform, is that for knowing about that really that if it's anything to do with like language arts, or if it's like right here at the house, I can go ahead and right here draw a chimney right here. I'm sure anybody probably say like, yeah, for most homes that maybe like to have a fireplace, and then maybe a pool in the back, maybe a good backyard, etc., etc. But knowing about for knowing about really about how kids usually feel whenever they are actually able to build something in the classroom. Could be maybe the gingerbread house, something like that. Any type of house, using basic shapes, and knowing about like really that for how to be able to tell the shapes apart. You have right here is like this shape right here that looks like, which goes for the rectangle. The rectangle, and then along say with the square. The square, and then the triangle. So for the triangle, and like anybody, I think I'm like, yeah, that knowing about that you can still remember, it's like some of few of the shapes. It's like even times even in college, I'm like that they still call them like those particular shapes. It's like maybe the diamond, but on your hand and knowing about, I'm like, yeah, that they just work just a little bit different, but other than those wood and plastic shapes that you may have, give you like what you call like different these what you call these digital memorized screen shapes or something like that. Like talk about, say, for a lot of things that more likely are totally different, knowing about them like for what that's required just to assist for the students. But on the hand, and knowing about, we may think that knowing about like with most students, that some of them that more likely say that they say, well, I want to quit, I want to drop out, etc., etc. But knowing about with most of the time, though, the way I would think about, though, is that, how much time, it's like, how much time are we willing to spend, like talking about, for ways of how to get help, and knowing about if it's, inquire you to raise your hand if you need assistance, and if it's anything to do with, ask or anything like that. But, on the hand, that knowing about, basically, what does help usually mean is basically knowing about, I'm like, yeah, that if you need help, assistance, ask for it, and some that may look at you like, well, you need to read the manual. Well, there's a direction, there's a book you can read just to help you further, but, yeah, a lot of ways, though, that, really, that if it's really what you call against the rule, to where you're not supposed to criticize other people just because they don't understand something, just because a student in a classroom don't understand this or that, that type of stuff. But in a lot of ways, though, the way I would think about it, though, is that if we're going to be looking at other students, and I can tell anybody here that a lot of times I've been in that situation to where that if I'm sitting at the desk right here and I feel like I'm alone, to where that I'm the one that, having to retake the test at least 4 times, and these other students right here have already passed their test, and then they're already, enjoying, playing a board game or any type of activity, or maybe watching our cartoon TV show in the classroom, etc., etc. But they have a little bit of free time until I can pass my test. I can't join them, that type of stuff. Kind of feels like knowing about like what it usually feels like whenever you start running behind on your stuff, and you may get all frustrated and stuff. But a lot of ways I think about though is that knowing about that, they usually say though that I'm like, yeah, that for one way, ways to how to prevent that, from that feeling, and knowing about, I'm like, really, something to look forward to. And usually that they say that, well, just think of something to look forward to. By the time you pass the test, then more likely I might talk about it. I say, really, what have they learned from me? Because ever since I've been in this class, that it seems like that, every time that they assign an assignment, that I keep getting stuck on something, and whenever I do something, then they say it wasn't done right. I feel like maybe I don't belong in this class because I keep messing up. And a lot of times, most times with teachers and tutors that may say that, really, that knowing about for how well you're willing to perform in the class, and as well as, I'm sure, if they say that, really, what have they really learned from you of knowing about, if you're going to keep trying. But you're going to keep trying, keep working on it, and knowing about for whatever they find out, knowing about, like anybody probably think about, really, that you're kind of maybe looking forward to what you call impressing other students, as knowing about, if you're able to you're able to memorize all the words on the board, from about a month ago, stuff like that, and knowing about like something that they may have seen, something that you've seen, that that they seen also, and knowing about stuff that can't really be explained as well. But on the other hand, that knowing about, I'm like, really, that knowing about a thing, I'm like, yeah, that something that you were doing that other students have seen, and then they were like, oh my goodness, how did you do that? But in a lot of ways, though, if any student that really wanted some attention while they were in the classroom, knowing about, I'm like, so far as attention goes by, saying is like that, yeah, for any kind of attention that more likely that they would want to have, of knowing about, I'm like, that they we're thinking about that something that they read in the book, and then they decide to go ahead and write a 1 or 2 paragraph long sentence, but then they decide that they decided to do a little bit more work than what was asked. And a lot of times that they may say that that they didn't get no appreciation for it. But let's just say that if there's a student in the classroom that maybe what you call that that discovers a way of how to what you call it, like how to write. I'm like, how to write a question mark, and I'm like, talk about like a kind of question mark, a question mark that what you calls like has like what you calls like a symbol icon. Knowing about, I'm like, yeah, the question mark that helps the teacher, helps get the teacher's attention just a little bit faster. And knowing about the way that some students that do work is normal. It's like if you want to go ahead and turn this question mark into or the smiley face. If we want to go ahead and maybe use a smiley face as example. Smiley face, and anything that more likely that gets the teacher's attention for knowing about, I'm like, something that maybe that they didn't know either, that knowing about, I'm like, really, what have other students in that classroom learned about me? I'm like, on the other hand too, that knowing about whenever I started, that knowing that really that I didn't really understand all those words in the book, etc., etc. But I'm sure in the long ways, down the road, that I'm sure anybody say that a few of those students and then the teachers, I'm sure, have learned a little bit about you, of knowing about, I'm like, yeah, that you're that person that a lot of times that you took the time and effort to write about the assignment, to write about the ABCs in order, something like that, something to remember by. And knowing about, I'm like, really, that maybe not everybody's going to be perfect, and everybody's going to have, like I say, maybe the same learning and knowledge, but I guess what you call that type of gift of knowing about, I'm like, really, that is that for what we all say born to do, and knowing about like the type of assistance that we can get, is that knowing about like really that with most students and teachers would probably say that knowing about, we may have learned, we may have heard that come before, is like everybody has a dream, yeah, but on the other hand, that knowing about like really does everybody, if everybody cannot follow along or understand something, then that maybe what you call it, they may need some extra help understanding something, especially if you're a special ed student, or if you are a student that may have gone to school, maybe if you may have been homeschooled at some point, knowing about really other students that look at you real weird until that they get to know you more, and then you kind of connect with them a little bit more, and knowing about them, like, yeah, that you start meeting other students, and they may have what you call maybe the same knowledge as you do, and as well as knowing about, there are some things that more likely that they may have learned about you as well, and then they kind of start asking you questions as well. Really, is school all about judging each other, or is school all about the fact about learning stuff, about learning, about the group, and anybody with a thing about, like, yeah, about help update explain? Is it all about, is being a part of the group all about the fact about, yeah, that you come here to learn, or yeah, well, we had that, you're not ready to come to this level yet, we're going to have to bring you back to level 1, you think that you gotta be in level 5 or something like that. And I can tell anybody here though that this reminds me of a story that whenever I was in the third grade, that a lot of students have passed their times tables, which I remember I took them. I passed them until I went, came to the fives. It's like for 5 times 5. But I remember that some students that I may have mentioned before that knowing about, I'm like, yeah, some students that may say that they'll go ahead and they'll do what they can to try to be with the group by saying that that they'll go ahead and try to cheat on a test. But it's like talking about, yeah, don't cheat, because knowing about them, if you do that, more likely that there could be a punishment even more. But besides interacting with all the other students, especially if it's like during the specials, and of course out of recess or anything like that, and knowing about them, like, yeah, that with most of the time it's like with most teachers that I saw, like, yeah, for like most kids, when they're out on the playground, during recess time, that a lot of times that they like I say on their normal behavior and on their hyper behavior as well. But just knowing about them, like, really about the things that more likely that you learned, see, out at recess time, and then as well as like the specials, and as well as if it's like show and tell or anything like that, and all the other class events or anything like that, or if it's a job or anything like that. That knowing about them, like, I'm sure that there's something special about each other, about knowing about for what we can do, for what we can learn, knowing about all a matter of time, about how much time it's willing to take, and knowing about that really, and for what feeds the brain, for what feeds the mind, what builds the education, and knowing about for how much time it takes within about 5 minutes to put the puzzle together, that knowing about for what you could change with the amount of time for improvement of education, and knowing about the type of help, so I say for help update, say explain color activity.